Hello, I'm Chuck Martin, and welcome to the Voices of the Internet of Things. With me today is Christian Gormsen, Chief Executive Officer of Eargo. Christian has been a management consultant at McKinsey, Senior Vice President GN ReSound, and Chief Operating Officer of Sterling Airlines. At Eargo, Christian leads the team looking for ways to improve the hearing of millions of people. Welcome here, Christian.
Well, thank you for having me, Chuck.
So I wonder if you could start. I know you've been involved in sound for a long time. If you could kind of walk us through what the state of the hearing market is today.
Well, thank you. And thank you for the opportunity to speak about the hearing market, because this is something that's really not being talked about. And the irony is that hearing loss is natural. It's something that happens to all of us. And now what's really changed in the last couple of decades is that people are living longer lives. So that means it's becoming more and more prevalent with hearing loss out there. Typically, unfortunately, people would pass away when hearing loss started getting severe enough. So to make this real, in America, we have approximately 48 million people suffering from hearing loss. So that's almost 15% of the population.
48 million?
48 million people are suffering from some level of hearing loss and would benefit by getting some level of amplification or help to address that. What's the state of the market? The state of the market is sad because only 20% of the 48 million people are actually in the category. So are actually doing something about hearing loss, which is a shame because this is not a disease. And there's perfectly great solutions out there for people to actually live a better life, be more productive, and get more out of social situations, because that is what hearing does. Hearing is actually one of your it's one of your core senses, but it is the biggest input that your brain gets is through the auditory system. And when your hearing starts deteriorating, that means your brain is getting less stimuli and is not being as active, which is, wrong. And you can actually do something about it. It's natural, but you can actually do something about it. And the sad thing, and the reason why I said it was sad, is that 20% of the population in the US is doing something about it. That number, the percentage of people, has not changed for multiple decades. So the industry, despite all the great advances that are happening on a technology front and in terms of awareness, focus on quality of life, you name it, really the underlying penetration has not changed. It's just being seen as natural and not something that you actually do something about. And that's sad.
So why don't people do something about it? That's 80% is huge.
Yeah, or it's 38 million people, 39 million people, right? It is a staggering who could be more productive, more participative, and get more out of life. So the reason, is that hearing aids specifically, actually the devices used to help you, are being seen, are stigmatized, right? A lot of people feel that if they crawl down to the level where they put on a hearing aid, they're broadcasting to the world that something's wrong with them. That would be the same as saying, because you're wearing glasses, you're not as intelligent as someone else. And that's honestly how glasses were looked upon back in the 50s and the 60s. That has changed. But with hearing aids, it's still the same way. People would rather not really hear or comprehend everything, and as opposed to show that we're wearing a hearing aid. And most hearing aids are visible. I think we've all seen the plastic pieces behind people's ears and so on, right? Which is a problem.
So what would change that?
Well, that's part of the mission of Eargo. And as you mentioned in your intro, I've spent a lot of time in this category, and it's been, it's not a new issue. What attracted me to Eargo and my reason for joining Eargo back 2.5 years ago now, was that here was a company who actually, how do we solve this and you can't solve it by fixing one thing. You gotta need to fix multiple things. But point number one, can you make a hearing aid invisible? Can you make it not visible to other people? So the Eargo founders and team early on really tried to create a solution that sits inside the ear canal. So it is virtually invisible for outsiders to know about. So, that's one way of circumventing this challenge. You can educate people and say it's okay, or you can just make it invisible.
So why,
almost like
why haven't companies figured this out?
I was part of this industry, and I'm still am, but I was part of the sort of incumbent part of the industry, and that's always been known. But the way to execute in-ear products, they have been more expensive to build. They have been less reliable. And since the big technology players are not selling directly to the consumer, they're selling through clinics. So you would need to go through multiple steps. You would need to get impressions of your ear taken. And the clinics, dislike selling products that sit in the ear because they created more problems. They created more interactions. You had to bring the patient back to fine tune and adjust. So it was so much easier for the clinics to sell a product that sits behind the ear because you have much less challenges with it. And you can say, well, that's not what the consumer wants. Well, at the end of the day, the user, if you go into a clinic and somebody in a white coat tells you that a product behind your ear is better, you will not question that person because that person is wearing a white coat. And I think that's about, who are we trying to solve for here? I think the traditional hearing aid industry solves for the clinic and what the clinic wants. And what I loved about Eargo is they were solving for what the consumer wants. True, it does provide some challenges. Eargos does not fit everybody physically, because every ear canal is different. We have multiple, we probably cater to about 80% of the population. Also, if you have a very severe or profound hearing loss, which is a fraction of the overall population, we do not provide enough amplification because you need a larger speaker system. Another big trend right now, and the reason why the industry isn't going into it, is that everybody wants everything to be connected. Well, if you put something all the way inside your ear, you're actually blocking for Bluetooth signals. Bluetooth radio is blocked by liquid. And well, you have a lot of liquid in your head. Sorry to break the news. So there's of course weighing pros and cons, but that was a very elaborate explanation here.
This is good. The reason I'm interested in Eargo, I saw your company the first time 2 CESs ago in Las Vegas, and at the time, I looked at a lot of hearing devices. In Internet of Things, we look at everything that deals with sound or voice or hearing or whatever, and all of the other devices that I saw were off the charts expensive, like $5,000, $6,000, $7,000. And I'm wondering how a market like that can survive.
Well, it's living better than ever before, right? And I think the challenge in America is there is no reimbursement code for hearing aids. There's no Medicare coverage. For those people who are on Medicare Advantage, most providers have some level of copay support, but it's still a marginal compared to the overall price of the product, right? And, the problem is, and the reason why the industry can survive is, when your hearing loss gets severe enough, you honestly cannot really function without hearing aids. So people will continue to get into the category as wealth is coming to the general public. Unfortunately, it is for the few at that price point, and people get into the category very late. You kind of push out the decision until you can't push it out any further. All science, all research will show you the sooner you start getting treatment, the more benefits you're getting. So it's kind of, we have a system that kind of works against itself, but still sustains it. And that's one of the key things with Eargo, that we wanted it to be at a much more accessible price point. And I think we're doing that by selling directly to the consumer as opposed to going through a clinic.
So is anybody else doing that? Just for you listeners, the reason we're talking to Eargo is because I'm extremely interested in this topic, because I haven't seen a direct-to-consumer, essentially ear assistance company other than you guys. And I'm wondering, a year ago when I saw your device, it was standalone. It was not connected. And it was intriguing to me because every other device was connected that I saw. This year at CES in January, when I saw your device, it's now connected. What is the difference? What changed?
Well, clearly we understand why connected is important. And I think, we're now living in the world of data. And some people are afraid of it. Some people embrace it. I definitely embrace it because data allows you to help you make decisions. You're still in control. So what we have done at Eargo is we've integrated a Bluetooth chipset into the charger of Eargo. So that means the devices are not connected all the time, but the devices are intelligent. So they log all the behavior that happens in them, the sound environment that you're in, how you use the product, what programs you use within the products. All of that data, when you recharge Eargos at night, is uploaded to the cloud. So our support team, we have professional audiologists on staff. They can review your material and actually suggest to you how to get better usage of your device and how to actually optimize it to your specific settings. So it's not happening real time, but it's happening every night. And that means when you call into Eargo and say, well, I'm really not using this or that program, we can disable it. You can also do that yourself via the app. But more importantly, we can also go in and personalize the settings. For example, one common request we're getting is for all them New Yorkers there is that, hey, in the mornings, I'm in this really uncomfortable sound environment, also called the underground. And, and there you have a lot of very high pitched noise. So how do you, and typically that's what's being amplified by a hearing aid. So we can go in and create an underground setting where we don't amplify that noise as much. And we actually modify it because it's an unnatural sound setting. And although we have intelligent products, sometimes you can sort of accelerate the development so that you get a more comfortable experience. So we definitely believe in connectivity. We can't create real-time connectivity, but I say, what is the connectivity that provides value? And we believe that's getting the best possible sound experience and also allowing you as a user to take control. I actually had one of my colleagues who said, what I love about Eargo is that we are actually, helping the patients being their own audiologist and empowering them to take control as opposed to being dependent on others to do it. If you need somebody to do it, we can do it for you, but we can also give you the tools to tune it yourself.
So with the app, are consumers now essentially adjusting their own hearing situation? That's
the vision over time. But this is a delicate balance because there's a lot of science behind this. So initially, on the first generation of the app, we can, very few people will use all 4 programs. So you can go in and you can deselect the programs that you're not using. You also have access to all the support and all the videos, the training material, and so on. So you have a one-stop destination to interact with Eargo. You also get all the data, so you can get much better professional support. But we clearly see that we can evolve the app to give more controls to the end user. But we want to take it step by step to make sure that whenever we provide extra complexity, that it's value adding to the user. But the ambition is that you can allow the user to do fine tuning of the settings themselves and sort of experience what that means. But the most important feature is still that our professional audiologist can have direct access and really help you. So we want to make it what we call it the a la carte menu. If you want to do everything yourself, you can choose to do it. If you want to be handheld and get the tasting menu, we still have that capability with our support team. And that is the most important, that we can control and help the user get the best experience.
So do you have a different kind of consumer who buys your product versus someone who would either not get any hearing device or someone who does get a $5,000 or $6,000 device?
That's what we thought when we went into this. We thought that we would see younger people, into the 50s versus the average age of a hearing aid user in the US is 70. We thought that we would get very tech-savvy people. I have been honestly really impressed and seen that we've gotten everything. We've gotten some younger users, but our average user age is still in the high 60s. So we're actually seeing that the technical competence, and you probably know a lot about this, of the baby boomers and the older generation is growing so fast. So from a demographic profile point of view, no, we're not seeing a significant difference. Yes, we're not seeing the classical real medical referrals. We're not seeing those cases, but we don't cater for those because we don't provide enough amplification. But for everything else, we're actually seeing a broad representation of Americans who are, and I think the only common denominator is they want to take control and take charge and do something about it. So we always talk about celebrating our customers because they're actually heroes in the fact that they take action and do something about it.
Is your company global or just U.S.?
Our ambitions and our planning is global, but right now the U.S. is the world's largest market. And I said, we are growing very rapidly, and I said we want to make sure that we fully deliver in the US before we go beyond the US market. But the ambition is over time to be international. But right now, we have so many improvement opportunities and so much potential in the US that we want to stay focused on that piece.
Why are hearing aids in general so expensive?
Well, I think it has a lot to do with the technology is very sophisticated. It is high tech. That was one of the things that early on in my career that I appreciated, that when you look at the processing technology that's applied in hearing aids, it beats any other kind of processing. It's ultra low power processing. It's kind of almost compared to lunar technology, so it is really advanced technology that goes into the devices. So that's where it starts. The sensitivity of the microphones and the speakers that make up the hearing aid are at a much higher level than what you typically see in cell phones and headsets because you have so little power to run them. So that's general for the industry, I think, and that goes for us and the industry players. However, we're still significantly lower priced, and I think the challenge is when you have an industry that consists of multiple channels, B2B, and then so business to business, and then from a business to a consumer, the fact that we can go direct to consumer with our own technology allows us to save on rent, the lack of productivity. So we're cutting out a lot of those costs by actually servicing the customers online and over the phone instead of having these very expensive locations all over where not a lot of things are happening. The productivity of a normal outlet is very low because it is hard to get people to come in. So there's a lot of idle time where people are not doing anything. We don't have to pay for that because we are actually serving the customer directly, and that allows us to have a much higher degree of efficiency in terms of supporting, while actually giving the customer more support.
So do any of these clinics, these white coat people you mentioned before, do any of those recommend your stuff?
Some do. I actually just spoke to one who do, but the majority sees us as a threat, which I don't think is the case. I honestly believe that our biggest mission is to get more people to hear, and the more people we get into the category, I think will create work for everyone, because some of those people we get into the category will need more counseling and more detailed measurements, which can only be delivered in a clinic. But, it's always that when you have a new entrant, but I am pleased with the community of audiologists out there, that it's not that we have gotten any kind of hate claims or anything like that. And I think in general, what characterizes anyone who works with audiology is that they want people to hear better and live better. So I've been honestly positive about sort of the general reception.
So is Eargo a technology company or a hearing company?
We're both, and a third thing, a third element. So what I'm telling people is we're definitely a product company, a technology company. That's a huge part of what we do, and technology is ingrained in everything we do. But we're not just a product. We're also a support company. We do believe in delivering audiology through technology. So we have a lot of digitized content, video, email, and so on. But also good old fashioned over the phone or on a video conference, whatever works. So that's number 2, support. And then 3, I think we're also a destination of content and knowledge around hearing. We want to be a destination for people to learn more about hearing, and we will actively advise people if Eargo is not the right solution. We will tell them, and we will also do whatever we can to help those people find another solution, be that in the traditional market. So I see Eargo really as being, obviously powered by technology and modern tools in terms of communication and access and branding and all of that, but really being product, support, and then awareness, getting out there. So it's a 3-in-1 from that point of view. And just changing one thing is not enough. I think you have to change all 3 things. That's why we're pushing on it.
From a stigma standpoint, does the explosive growth of earbuds, Apple products and so forth, is that going to change the perception of putting things in people's ears?
Okay, I thought you were going to say something different. That's 2 points. Is it going to change? I think it will, but I still think the vast difference between a hearing aid and an earpod on AirPod is that a hearing aid is something you wear all day. A headset, and right now I'm wearing AirPods, right? It's fine to wear for a conversation like this, but I can't wait to take them out again, right? So this is typically something you wear for half an hour tops, and then you want to get them out. And this is, the difference to hearing aids is they are actually designed in a way so you forget you're wearing them. You never forget you're wearing your headset or your AirPods because, you lose your sense of surrounding. They block out exterior noise and so on. So they're comfortable on the plane. They're comfortable in a talking environment, but they're not comfortable all the time, and hearing aids are. So yes, it will change it, but I think that's 2 fundamentally different things. And
so ultimately, will people be able to hear other things through your headsets, through your earphones, like music and so forth?
That's part of it, but this is back to where I started. I think one of the challenges of Eargo is that we're not Bluetooth connected in the ear, because that will require that the device sticks out of the ear. So it's kind of a trade-off. Do you want an invisible product or do you want a connected product? And I think with Eargo, we're focusing on the invisibility and the convenience. Over time, as technology evolves, clearly it's something we hope. There's nothing we would love more than that. But I think the good news about actually because typically the number 1 request from a lot of users is they want to be able to hear the TV better, and if you could stream the TV sound straight. Well, if you hear better, then you don't need to stream the TV sound straight. That doesn't help you in terms of music, and if only you want to be able to hear it. But right now, technology does not allow for it. I think that at the speed of which wireless technology is evolving, I think this could be possible 3 to 5 years in the future.
So does 5G impact you at all?
No, because we're not dependent on sort of data bandwidth, right? Our issue is getting data into the devices, and that's more of a radio part there.
Your company, if my research is correct, has raised somewhere north of $45 million. What do investors see in this?
We've actually raised a whole lot more. We're actually in excess of $100 million. And I think what investors are seeing, we're seeing a lot of interest from investors, and we've been seeing that from the beginning. It's, the type of investor is changing now towards the larger investors. They're seeing a company that is helping people out there. They're bringing, medical technology direct to consumer. And there's actually not a lot of companies out there doing that. So this is something that investors find fascinating. They believe that healthcare is changing, and that change will only accelerate. And they want to invest in companies that are on the forefront on bringing healthcare and medical technology directly to the consumer and making a more efficient and a more accessible path for people to live better lives. So, yeah, that's essentially what we're looking for.
So do the hearing aid companies hate you guys?
One would think so. Obviously, I come out of that. I have a lot of actually friends in the hearing aid industry, and I think one of the CEOs of one of the largest hearing aid players is called Demont. I think he put it very well. He said, Christian, I love what you are doing. You're clearly creating more access to the market. I think that's something that we and everybody else in the industry can benefit from. Clearly, we're monitoring very closely whether we should do something similar. But right now, we're focused on being loyal to our channel, which is, of course, the clinics out there. So competing head to head with them would be a challenge. But I think the future will hold, room for everybody. Because, like we started saying, that's 48 million Americans. Not everybody is going to go to one model. And if we can succeed in bringing more people into the category, it's for the benefit of all the industry participants. Plus, of course, most importantly, those people who get into the category, because they will get more out of life.
So what do you see from the generations coming up, millennials and so forth, from a hearing standpoint? Do you see the same evolution over the next couple decades?
Yes. Hearing, nothing is fundamentally changing. Hearing loss is as natural as losing your hair, right? As male. And it happens earlier to males than it does to females, right? And that's exactly what happens when you lose, it's basically a degradation of your nerve that comes naturally with age. That's not going to change. What's changing is, of course, that you can do something about it and you won't have to suffer from it. But no, that's going to continue. There's been a lot of talk and research. Well, what about all the airports? Are people blasting more noise into their ears than they were? And that one, yes, true. There is, of course, since the Walkman was introduced in the 80s, right, there's more and more music being blasted directly in. On the other hand, the society in general is much more focused on noise pollution. So for the baby boomers coming to age right now, the 60s and the 70s, they grew up in the industrial age where there was no focus on noise in the workplace. That has changed dramatically. So I think you got pros and cons, but there's nothing slowing down the amount of people getting older as we get healthier as a world population. And that's going to drive it.
So lastly, when I see you next year at CES for the third year in a row, what will you be talking about and showing then?
I will continue to talk about how the world is migrating towards more and more focus on not letting things sit by, but people taking action. From a product point of view, we'll be talking about how we can get even more personalized, how we can reach even more people. From a branding, awareness, marketing point of view, how we're successful reaching more people. I also hope, Chuck, that we'll be talking about how important it is for you and I to have conversations like this and bring up the topic of hearing, because it's relevant for everybody and so few people talk about it. So what I hope, my dream a year from now is that we have more people talking about hearing loss. And I just wanted to thank you again for actually taking the time to put this up and also help broadcast, that hearing is something that is natural and it's something that we can do something about. So shame on us for not talking about it and not doing something about it.
It's all part of the connected world. Thank you, Christian, and thank you all for listening to the Voices of the Internet of Things.